Hello, hello, and welcome to Stars with Stasi, where no matter who or what you are on this cosmic journey, you are welcome here. Greetings, I'm Stasi, your trusted psychic and intuitive reader. Today, I have the pleasure of welcoming back my dear friend and accomplished author, Raven Digitalis. If you're unfamiliar, Raven is a Gothic witch, a practicing Freemason, and an author whose work have guided countless seekers on their path. He's the creative mind behind books like Esoteric Empathy and the brand new Magick for Empaths, as well as the creator of the newest Gothic Witches Oracle deck, a deck that dives deep into the layers of our spiritual journey. He also offers profound Thoth tarot readings, and you'll find all the links to Raven's work below in the description box. Raven, welcome back. It's so good to have you. How have you been?
Good. Thanks for having me back. It's great to see you again.
It's always a pleasure. You have done so much since we last spoke with this empath series. I can't wait to dive into it. For those of us that are still getting to know you, tell us a little bit about what first drew you into the world of magic, and also what has your journey looked like so far?
I've always been a little different. I'm sure a lot of readers, listeners can relate to that. When I was in high school, I was introduced to mystical spirituality, especially by way of cinema, with Practical Magic and The Craft and
One of my favorites.
yeah, Charmed and Buffy and things like that. So
Yes.
fun. And I'm like, what is this? There are real witches out there and magicians and mystical thing. So just really started to dive in then and had the pleasure in high school of getting trained in the Georgian Wiccan tradition by the co-founder, Zanoni Silverknife. So she's the founding priestess of the Georgian tradition, an American Wiccan tradition. So that was my first official training. And from there, I integrated Buddhist philosophy. I started with that. And now I'm, I still hold on to those incredible teachings, but also integrate Hinduism, Sanatana Dharma.
Beautiful.
Balance both the Eastern and the Western is my approach.
And I think that's a great approach to it, multifaceted, because magic is so many things to so many people. And I always say there's no wrong way to explore the beauty of magic, because that's the beauty of you. So thank you so much for sharing that. And I've often, especially in my younger years, was compared to the curly haired witch on what was
In The Craft.
yes, right?
Yeah.
Imagine I went through it in high school.
Oh, yeah, you got the Feruza bulk thing. That's a great compliment.
It's a hairstyle that has never gone away, actually.
Thank
So
goodness.
I'm really excited to talk about your empath series today. We've got the Everyday Empath, Esoteric Empathy, and also the Empath's Oracle, which I use a lot on my channel. So let's start by looking at the Everyday Empath. One of my favorite passages here, you dive into empathy as gaining public recognition in the 60s, thanks largely to the characters on Star Trek. And what I think is funny here, and I want you to talk to us about what the definition of an empath is, but I have to add that when I was in college, I actually got into it with one of my professors because I said I was an empath, and he told me it wasn't a real word. And he said, that's only something that you see on Star Trek. And I'm like, absolutely not. I
Funny.
was I was raised by a high priestess, and I knew I was an empath. So tell me more about what being an empath means, because it's not just from Star Trek.
Yeah, going back to cinema again, huh?
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
but yeah, sometimes that's just what it takes. So yeah, I think Star Trek was the first to use empath as a character description term. In the early 70s, the character called Jem in one of the episodes called the empath is an alien. Deanna Troy is a character who's half empath, half human. Empaths are an alien species in the show. That's a great way to introduce the concept. I think that was the first time it became a self-referential point. And now it's used in psychotherapy. The truth is that everybody's a developing empath. We're not total aliens, even though it feels like it sometimes. Maybe partially, but you know.
So, how would one know that their empathy skills are awakening within them, or that they could identify as an empath?
The choice to identify semantically as an empath or as a psychic, as a whatever, it's all personal choice, personal relevance. Everyone has empathy to a different degree. and psychic and mediumship skills and different talents. We're just all talented in different ways. For those who identify as an empath or as highly empathetic people, the common experience is feeling emotions on high, like hypersensitivity. That doesn't mean empathy. Somebody can be super hyper emotionally sensitive and not necessarily be very empathetic. What differentiates the empath or the empathic skills and abilities is that we often unconsciously absorb what's around us and take on what's around us, and often don't realize what belongs to us and what is from outside sources. And these can be global sources, national.
Right.
Usually they're
Political stuff.
interpersonal though. So
Yeah.
like gathering those emotions at the grocery store or when talking to somebody who's very impassioned, that's when we absorb the highest amount of emotions just in daily life. And for some people that can be a very difficult experience, and we all go through it sometimes. And for some it can cause an isolation response, which can be healthy and can be self-care to a degree, but too much, and then it's just too isolating. We're here and sensitive for a reason, is how I see it.
I agree with that. It can be isolating, especially when you are awakening to that portion of you, and being around others can feel heavy. One of the things that you discuss in your book, and I believe we're looking at page 11 here, is empathy versus sympathy. And you started to allude to how they are different. Can you tell us more about the journey of the empath versus what many of us might feel at a surface level of sympathy?
Yeah, people can be very compassionate and sympathetic, and that's wonderful. And sometimes empaths need to invoke more sympathy and less empathy for survival's sake. Sympathy is about feeling for someone, like, I feel this way for you, and it's a compassionate response. Empathy is absorbing, it's the whole absorption thing. Feeling as somebody or feeling as the emotion rather than feeling for it or for them. So there's a difference there, but there are similarities.
I think you mentioned in this book you were talking about the mirror neurons, which I found fascinating. You get into the biology behind how empathy shows through and what that looks like neurologically. And you were discussing mirror neurons, and that was a new term for me, but it makes complete sense. You mentioned, have you ever noticed when you sit near someone, they cross their legs, you cross your legs, they clear their throat, you clear your throat. So I found that to be like, oh, that is true. I didn't even realize that in the beginning I would do that so often. So can you tell me more about the mirror neurons? I found that fascinating.
I'm not a scientist, more of a metaphysician. So both Esoteric Empathy and that book, The Everyday Empath, go into that idea in detail. And that links to one of the most important concepts and about the reality of empathy, which science recognizes at this point, is that empathy is evolutionary. If we can empathize with each other, it ensures greater success of species, of communities. So empathy is literally connected and tied to evolution, biologically, spiritually, on all the levels. And that's where mirror neurons come into play. That's just a modern term for certain neurosynaptic responses that we have physiologically that reinforce the reality that empathy is evolution.
I honestly had never given it much thought about the biology behind it, but you point out here that the hormone oxytocin is greatly responsible for the experience of empathy, known as the love hormone. Oxytocin helps transmit pleasurable sensation and is the body's natural antidepressant. And I wonder that because empaths absorb the feelings of others, especially before we learn boundaries, which we're going to get into in much detail later, it isn't necessarily the healthiest thing to absorb all of the emotions others house within them, right?
We have to do something with that energy.
Right.
Yeah.
Because it does become a superpower
Mm-hmm.
once you learn to work it. But tell me more about esoteric empathy. Tell me a little bit about what was the driving force behind this book, because I believe, was this your first one in the series?
Actually, I wrote Esoteric Empathy first.
Oh, I see. Okay, so then tell me more about how these books work together.
Well, it's funny because I intended to write the Everyday Empath first, but then once I had completed it for submission to Llewellyn, they said, actually, we're wanting the magical one, the one with all the magic and the mystical stuff in it. So I'm like, okay, we'll do that first, and then we'll do the other. There had never been a book about empathy specifically for magical people and those drawn to magical spirituality, mysticism, and witchcraft. And that's just what I was being called to do. We got to listen to the muses when they speak,
Absolutely.
have, invoke that confidence and with the
And
visions that we receive.
I agree. And I will tell you this book, for those of you exploring your spirituality, any divination tool, tarot, the Ouija board, even prayer, which is part of the spiritual journey because you are getting in tune with all parts of self. When you open up that gateway and allow yourself to shine brighter, you will attract all kinds. And so this book is highly recommended for anyone needing to build boundaries as we explore that journey of self. You talk about the emotional absorption, right, that happens. And we touched on that a little bit, but it reads here, empathy is an emotional absorption or deep identification with another to the point of personally experiencing the sensation of another person, a situation, an animal, an environment, etc. Empaths experience others' emotions as if they were your own. What is the importance here of understanding what is yours and what is maybe that of another realm or a client, for example, or even someone you're just around?
Yeah, even with spirits and environments, we
Yeah.
can have an empathic experience. And often that's unconscious and we don't necessarily realize that's what's happening. So I think the most important first step is to recognize and sit with the emotional energy rather than trying to point fingers inside or outside, but rather being like, okay, I acknowledge that this is what I'm experiencing. So let me work with this and I can deconstruct it mentally and cognitively later. That looks different for everyone. I always encourage highly empathic folks to seek out water, whether that's a shower, a bath, a swim in the river or the ocean, just hydrating. So
Yeah.
important.
And as we're sitting here talking about being near water, and I always talk about the power of the shower, there is a huge storm brewing outside. What I found to be probably one of the more difficult parts of my magical journey, especially in the beginning, was just learning the everyday things that I can do to eliminate what I like to call it the bad juju, because you're right. Once you sit with it, discernment comes into play. Is it mine? Is it someone else's? Where have I been today? What could it possibly be? And I know that here on page 81, you talk about projecting versus absorbing and different things that we can do. But you say the empath has the ability to instantly transmute external energy when it enters. This energy can be visualized as exiting the feet so that Mother Nature can take it on. Privately, you and I have had this discussion, but I do have to say that you are the reason I was able to actually continue the magical work. This is 100% true. I hit the biggest roadblock when my clairs were really waking up, and I'd never experienced anything like that in my life. And I didn't know what to do. Like you said, this just isn't anywhere. A high priestess I was working with at the time recommended that I pick up this book, and it was life changing.
Oh,
So, yeah, one of the things that really changed for me was learning how to transmute the energy. I want you to spend some time talking about that because I found that to be life changing and allowed me to continue my magical practice. So thank you, by the way.
and thank you. That means a lot to me. The thing about empathy, and especially for developing empaths who haven't learned to conduct these energies, not that I'm perfect, but we're all learning, is that we're not required to just sit with everything we absorb and let that compound our own emotional well internally. We can do that. And that's when empathy feels like a curse. But what we're
Yes.
responsible to do with that emotional energy, because empathy is purely emotional energy. What we're required to do, I would argue, as responsible empaths and emotional mystics, is take the energy and conduct it, transmute it, transform it. The way that I've found it to be the most successful is through a brief visualization. Like you said, we can transmute and conduct that energy really quickly. We just have to remember that we have that ability. So when we're feeling that emotional overload, if we have time to take a shower and do some mantras or whatever our practice is, great. But sometimes we don't. So energy tends to enter through the receptive side, through our left, and we can conduct energy through the right, even if we're ambidextrous or different-handed. But that's like a general rule, and everybody's constitution is different, just like our biologies. But there are some commonalities, and what I've suggested and what most others find successful also is to imagine that emotional overload and that energy building within us and conducting it, like you mentioned, either to the earth or even like right in the midst of a conversation with somebody, being like, recognize, okay, this is overwhelming. Compassionate response, because that's the thing about empathy. It requires a compassionate response. It's not just feeling heavy emotions. And that compassionate response is something I reference in all my empathy books and the Empath's Oracle deck. So how can we quickly respond compassionately without sacrificing our integrity in the midst of conversation or text? Part of that is communicative, how we communicate with the other. And the other part is just the energy, the etheric energy. We can visualize it entering our left, or, being where it is, and then exiting our right side. And that's just a quick visualization that will help us better respond as more empowered empaths.
So, what advice would you give? Because I know that sometimes I struggle with this, especially because I'm such a sassy Scorpio, that the neurospicy in me sometimes is super blunt. I'm like, oh, I can't listen to that right now. But then there's also, like you said, the compassionate side. And for many of us, I think those lines get blurred. How do you, on one hand, keep a strong boundary and keep a safe distance from things that don't serve you, because you might be the light in someone's life, so to speak. You might be that compassionate ear without overextending yourself. I know that you do talk about different magical tools and things like that, which we're going to get into, but just on a quick, even via text or just a quick conversation, what's an example of showing a compassionate response while still maintaining a boundary?
It really depends on the situation, because if someone's intention is placing all the energy on the empath to solve what they have going on, that's not fair. Even if it's a psychotherapist, we can't expect them to have all the answers. So that's an unfair expectation. So it's good to recognize when things like that are happening. We don't need to solve every conflict or question or thought immediately. Like, we can take little space, time. Highly sensitive people of all types need personal space now and then. And that's an example of a boundary. One of my family members is very empathetic, and she will sometimes have to not come to events, social gatherings, because of being overwhelmed and overloaded. I've had to learn to say too, I don't think I can go out tonight because this is how I'm feeling. And it's just owning it and taking responsibility. That's part of being authentic. We can have boundaries and kindness at the same time and not feel bad about setting boundaries. Boundaries don't have to be huge.
Like, it's definitely okay to say no without feeling guilty. And I think that for me, that was one of the things that kept me so isolated initially, was picking up on other people's energy. And when you get to the point that you really start picking up on what other people are thinking, or your intuition is letting you know, like, oh, this is too much. In a face-to-face situation, it is sometimes great to just acknowledge, I'm sorry you're having a difficult time. Let's go ahead and change the scenery now. Let's move past this, or direct them to an appropriate source. One of the examples you bring up here is going to the grocery store. Just literally something as simple of leaving the house, going to the grocery store. You end up walking past a frustrated mother, an employee who has just had an argument with the boss. And next thing you're like, oof, what's that?
Exactly. And that's an opportunity for that projective empathy. Because if we can set those boundaries in advance, even through little visualizations, move the body, invoke some sunlight, do a little yoga, then we are in a more projective state. So we're not walking around like, oh, there's that, there's that, there's that. And oh, I'm so overwhelmed. We can smile. Okay, I recognize that. Smile, smile. And that's still authentic. It's being like, radiating positivity. And just those little things can make a huge difference in somebody's day. And that's really taking responsibility for the empathy as positive creators.
One of the other things that you pointed out, which I really want to highlight, is the recognition that just because we sense it, feel it, intuit it, or it's told to us in point blank format, it doesn't make it our responsibility to fix. The responsibility that we have isn't necessarily to correct the other person, it's to correct the energy that's coming through to us. Am I hearing that right?
Absolutely. Correcting the energy, taking it to higher vibration as much as we're able to. We're not always able to, but with practice, we can do that more frequently. And it's not that we have to solve everything right away or help another solve everything right away. It's more of the empath's job to soften the energies as much as possible, even if we get overwhelmed sometimes.
I know that you talk about different ways to release it back into the ground. I think you talk about hugging a tree, being near water, having a rainstorm come your way. What's one of your favorite ways to do it if you're feeling overwhelmed?
Oh, I go to yoga, both in the form of physical yoga and also meditation. Bhakti yoga includes mantras, kind of devotional work, and connecting with deities of pure compassion and protection. That's where my Hindu side comes in more than the witchy side. When I'm getting witchy with it, I'll maybe light a candle and do magical stuff as much as time allows to help conduct those energies. But there are also many tools and things that we can utilize on a daily basis that do not take much of a time investment.
This is good stuff because it works, right? And
Yeah.
ultimately, it's about an intentional step, regardless, understanding that what you're absorbing may or may not be yours, that your responsibility is for you to make sure that you are the best conduit of energy that you can be. So, again, to contemplate whether you tend to express or repress emotions. And I guess that goes back to kind of sitting with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And
And I would also say it connects to making art, just expressing personally. It doesn't always have to be with another person. I'm a fan of performance art. Now, that takes some work and effort unless you're just recording it on your own. I'm a fan of writing. I have friends that are great with sculpting and painting, sketching, poetry, and journaling, which I always forget to do. Putting those emotional frequencies when they're heightened to an external form is a way of conducting that energy and lightens the load a little bit.
I agree with that. It's a beautiful expression of magic because you're expressing parts of you in one form or another out into the universe. And it does allow you to see yourself, right? It allows you that moment of contemplation. And then you get to see the product in front of you. And then you can interpret what you see and
Yeah.
determine more of it.
And that's linked to mindfulness, taking that step back and becoming a little bit more objective, because it's so easy for highly empathetic people to be subjective and just like be here in what we're experiencing. But taking that step back, that's mindfulness in action, right?
It is. And so I want to go over some of these everyday tools that people can carry with them or can use. So I'm not going to do these in order because I want to start with the one that I had never given thought to, because this
Right.
one was new to me. A black chicken feather. I
Black.
had even considered that. Tell me about the black chicken feather and why black and why a chicken.
Well, in African diasporic traditions, including those influenced by Haitian voodoo, for example, influencing hoodoo practice, black chicken feathers are used in a lot of those traditions, especially hoodoo. That's where I'm most exposed to it. The black is to signify the absorption and, because it's a feather, brushing off of negative energy, curses, things that one has accidentally accumulated. I remember a time last year when a friend invited me out and we were just hanging out, and then they had to leave. Suddenly something shifted and I was really just overwhelmed. I'm like, what is triggered here? And couldn't figure it out. A spirit had stepped in, or some kind of energy accumulation stepped in. Like you said, we were like beacons for this stuff. So I had to do the cleansing first in order to cognitively realize, okay, that wasn't mine.
Yeah.
So
And then the one that I like here is the hematite. It is that silvery black stone that you use for grounding. So tell me more about why that one's a good one.
yeah, it's a stone of grounding. So the water element, because empathy is connected to the water element, can be grounded down with really heavy earth element energy, and hematite is one of those that just help us ground and center and become a bit more calm in the storm.
One of the things that you mentioned that I found really interesting and I tried recently was placing it in a cup of water and then drinking it afterwards. Tell me more about that, how that came to be,
Yeah,
because it worked.
that's just making an elixir, especially with intention. You put a stone in the water, say the prayers, activate the stone's energy, give it gratitude, and drink the water or the tea or the elixir, and don't swallow the stone.
Important, folks, do not swallow the stone. Although I think I might try that with the rose quartz and see what I can bring my way. Okay. So I like that. And you do list a lot of different stones here.
The number one stone is black tourmaline for empaths. But
Oh,
I do want to give a warning about black tourmaline, whether wearing it as a necklace, carrying it in the pockets, or whatnot. Don't make it a daily practice, because I've found, and discussed this with many other sensitives, is that black really puts up that barrier. Like, that's more, I use it for emergency purposes, or if I'm, going to a big show, or just feeling off kilter and have to go in public. That's when it should be used, or teaching a class or something, but not on a daily basis, because it can be very isolating. So it's a really good one to have handy, black tourmaline, but not to use constantly, because we still want to be interactive with others and with society.
okay. Would you suggest something like that, for example, in this type of workspace and keeping it in your office or something?
Or having it on hand is a good idea. I think for workspaces, especially those that have computers and technology, smoky quartz is the go-to for that.
Okay.
That's said to absorb electromagnetic frequency and energy. So that's an absorber. And then that also means that we have to cleanse it regularly if we keep it in our workspace or on person.
Good to know. Oh, here's another one I have highlighted. This is something everyone has access to, the onion. You wrote, onions are great tools of protective and cleansing magical work. Onion is said to absorb excess energies, and you can place fresh sliced onions by the bedside when sleeping, or you can rub onion juice all over the body to cleanse and process repressed emotions. Now, you do warn that it might smell a bit funky, right? Other traditions will put onions in the bottom of socks to help with any type of negativity, or if you're feeling ill, to absorb that. I hadn't really thought about onions as a way to do this.
Yeah, garlic and onions both keep away the vampires for a reason. So if one feels like their energy is being sucked by somebody else and they don't want it sucked, that's a good barrier, good tools to utilize in any way. And you find the same principle with aspoetita, aka hing, Hing, aka devil's dung, which is used in Indian cooking. I think it smells fantastic when it's used for cooking and tastes incredible in any Indian dish. It's related to the onion and is used for the same principle, exercising negative energies. Maybe that's why Indian food is so healing.
It's so good. Besides the Cuban food, that yeah, I'm Cuban, I'm biased, but besides that, I think Indian has got to be my next favorite cuisine for sure. I think it's really important to try out different modalities for creating your boundaries, for creating the alchemy of the energy. And again, I can't say enough about this, especially if you are a magician, you're working on it, you're thinking, you're being drawn towards it. But again, just like this book reads, this is for the everyday empath. This is for anyone, no matter what path you're taking. So both of these are great books, but this one is magic leaning and really gets into different types of rituals and symbols. It's amazing. And I definitely appreciate having this in my collection.
Well, thank you. It's still my favorite book that I've written so far.
I can see why. As many people are familiar, I do use your Oracle deck on my channel quite a bit. Oracle decks, and the way I use them a lot of times is like for shadow work or for bringing up something that is something to contemplate after a reading. So, is there a particular card that you wanted to review, or we'll just take a go at it?
Yeah, why don't you pull a card and
All right, let's pull a
that's the
card
perfect.
and see.
Okay, what does everybody need to hear right now?
What does everyone need to hear from the Empath's Oracle deck?
Thank you. I can't believe it's
Could
created
you?
what you get.
I'm going to let you, here we go. Meditating and reflecting, number 38. So tell me all the things. There's so much symbolism in this right here.
So
Meditating and reflecting.
all of these cards are painted by my friend Konstantin Bax, who lives in Germany, and they're all acrylic. They're not digitally altered at all. They're all big acrylic pieces, layered, 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 just so beautiful. I'm just honored to have worked with him and that I can count him as a friend. Meditating and reflecting. So that seems to be a recurring theme. I have that card in there as a reminder to take a step back, like we were talking about with the mindfulness, to take a step back and find our groove, connect back to our heart center, think things through rather than being reactive. So a lot of times that card will come up if somebody's being too reactive or if they're judging themselves too harshly and need a reminder to take a step back a little bit, reflect and think rather than just react.
Yeah, I would say respond versus reacting, thinking about what's happening in the mind and even the artistry here. I hope you guys can see it, but there is some type of bird here and they're speaking, and this is the face of a person. The thoughts, like overwhelming things. What is your inside mind trying to tell you? And is it overwhelming you? It's important to be able to build boundaries while elevating your gifts and your precious time as well. You also read cards professionally. You offer a host of things. So let's talk about what it is that you offer professionally, how people can find you, and what's up next for Raven Digitalis, because you will be back, sir.
I have a calendar app on my website, ravendigitalis.com, links below. And people can schedule a reading with me, just like they can with you on your website. All the availability is there. So my readings are around an hour long, and each one's a little different, but there tends to be a general framework, and they go pretty deep. I know yours do too. Your readings are phenomenal.
Thank you so much. But we do read two different decks, right? And you read exclusively with the Thoth Tarot. So that's something that I do not offer at this point.
Yeah, the Thoth or the Thoth deck is what I read with exclusively and specifically with that one. I resonate with it the most and am most learned in that and find the most success with those sessions. So yeah, those are my tarot sessions. I also offer Reiki, long distance or in-person Reiki sessions, and also customized spell kits, which are really fun because we chat on the phone. I know kids hold the phone like this now, but
right. But for us old heads, it's the flip phone.
yeah, we chat on the phone, have a little consultation. I write the spell, print it out on parchment and the scroll, and mail the materials for the client to do their own casting. I don't cast magic on behalf of other people. And I will not take any, speaking of boundaries, like I've gotten so many requests to curse this person, bring back my partner who is with this other person. I'm like, no, because then that is bordering on manipulation, black magic, for lack of better terms, and just manipulation is not
You took
cool.
the words right out of my mouth. Yeah. So I think that's just another important boundary to make sure that you are clear with yourself so that you can be clear with others, what you are willing to take on and what you're not. I do love the idea of being able to consult with a seasoned magician. So I would highly recommend that if you're looking for something like that, visit Raven's website and have a consultation and see what it is that you can co-create together. I think that is a unique service. Not many people offer that.
Right. And it's having a lot of success too. Like a success in terms of the client gets
Doing well
mastered.
with it. Yeah. Well, because you understand the correspondences. I mean, that can take years to learn. And so I think it's a really good idea that if you're thinking about crafting a specific situation for whatever reason, consult with someone and see what it is that they can offer you. And in this instance, I would say Raven would be a great pick because you know that the heart's in the right place when it's being made. It's being made with intention.
Right. And it's all for the greater good.
Yeah, always. And it
That's
should
my,
be.
yeah.
That's important. Tell us what's coming up next for you. What are you producing now? You're always making something.
I'm taking a little break from writing, but I'm orienting into even more tarot services and the things that we just talked about. That's where I'm really honing in on now. But I did write a book with my original publishers, Llewellyn, who we all know and love, and that's called Shadow Magic Spellbook. Spells, Charms, and Rituals for Positive Change is the subtitle of it. And that just became broadcast online, so I can share it now. And that comes out in March of 26.
So much happening in March. I can't. Okay. You're going to have to come back so we can talk about that. That's exciting. All right, guys. Well, thank you, Raven, so much for spending your time and energy with us today and for giving us such valuable information. Again, guys, all the links are in the description box. But I have to say, no matter where you are on your journey, these books are absolutely going to be beneficial, especially as you feel your clairs waking up and you're starting to get the pings and the ear ringings and all the things that you guys always write me about. It's important to know that you hold the tools, you have the power to create the boundaries, to transmute that energy, and to use it for not only your greater good, but for the greater good of those around you. So, again, Raven, thank you so much. And as I always say, may the magic that we weave and the words that we speak be healing to all those who seek it. Have a great week ahead, everyone, and shine brightly.